Welcome to Making Do in Hard Times, where we explore how to keep your digital presence up to date and relevant during this time of crisis. Twice a week, we will live stream conversations about how organizations are making do, whether that's working from home, publishing emergency updates, or operating on shoestring budgets. Topics will range from content strategy during emergencies to refreshing your website without having to upgrade your CMS. Today is April 7th, 2020, and the topic is Crisis Response in Higher Education. I'm Todd Nienkerk, your host and CEO at Four Kitchens, and our guests today are also web chefs. Please meet our UX strategists, Donna, Emily, and Grace. Donna, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hello, I'm Donna Habersat, UX strategist here at Four Kitchens. I've been working on a variety of university websites, higher ed websites, for the last few years now. And I'm just right outside of Austin, Texas, is where I'm officing from my home there. Emily.
Hi, everybody. I'm Emily Sapp, also UX strategist. I've been with Four Kitchens for about 3 years, and because of that, I've also had my fair share of higher education website projects. I'm based in Portland, Oregon, over on the West Coast. So pass it to Grace.
Hello, I'm Grace Stokel, UX strategist as well at Four Kitchens. Also working on multiple higher ed website projects currently. And I work in my home office here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Thank you, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about emergency response in higher education. Emily, I'd like for you to kick us off with some thoughts as to why there are specific challenges within education as it relates to going remote and dealing with the crises that we're currently in.
Yeah, I think, higher ed is packed with unique challenges, and that's been always an interesting and exciting part of our jobs is that our challenges have always been complex when we work on higher ed projects. And so I'm seeing that carried through to this emergency response situation because there's just so many levels of complexity involved. We're working with information security. We're working with equity is particularly interesting to me. I'm having some conversations with people about what they can require during this time and how to have academic continuity when they're no longer in control of sort of the playing field that people are playing on. So in a way, people from all different economic backgrounds and different levels of resources can come on campus and in a way have a level playing field. They have access to libraries, they have access to technology, and because of that, the expectations can be kind of similar across the board. And when you remove that, when you take these students off campus, all of that equity goes away. And how do you ensure you have that academic continuity when you don't have any control over the environment anymore? And I've seen some really great work in getting students access to computers, getting students access to internet, making sure that students that relied on educational institutions for meal plans and things like that. I'm seeing it at my own daughter's school, who's she's in first grade, seeing it also happen at that level as well. So, and it's really making me aware of how higher ed institutions are more than just a place for education, or any educational institution for that matter. It's so much more than that.
Mm-hmm. So there's, I think, an additional problem. Donna, you and I were talking yesterday about how a lot of universities can be very siloed, and that's by design or by nature or just as part of their culture. Could you say a few words about the siloing within the university world and how that operates under normal circumstances, and then the problems that are faced when we're dealing with things like we are today?
Sure. With the silos, a lot of universities rise above in competition from other universities. But now it kind of presents this sort of confusion of happening, where we have seen on some university websites in response to coronavirus, their coronavirus website, where they say, this is our general information, but also talk to your school or go see your school website and see what they're saying. Their information precedes this, and so students are like, well, which do I follow? I'm having conflicted information. I don't know what to follow or what to do. There's also no sense of like authority and that there's direction. It lacks confidence in the students. Then it gives them anxiety and they're unsure of it. Not only for the students, but also the faculty. And are we all doing this the same? Are we all following the proper procedures? Is this the final decision that's coming on? This is how we should be doing. So in times of crisis, you really need that more central authority and coming together. And we've been kind of exploring some articles about that and reading, what to do in times of crisis and having crisis plans and having not only what information you need to set up, but action plans. Who's doing what? Who's responsible for this? Who makes the decision? Where does the buck stop? And who makes those decisions? Grace, I think you've had a couple of points too you might have wanted to add, because I remember we've had a conversation about this as well on the silos.
Yeah, the silos are a normal course of business for most universities, and it's how their budgets work. They get to focus really deeply on a specific audience, and it can be helpful normally. But they have to somehow come together with cross-pollinate a response committee once something like a pandemic occurs. I mean, there's lots of other kind of crises that they have to deal with. But this one in particular is just so universal, and they had to respond so quickly. Everything unfolded so quickly. I think most universities are aware that they need to have a crisis team that can pull together quickly. So hopefully they have that team already identified so that when a crisis does unfold, they know who to talk to, who to gather. And that breaks down those silo walls in order to get the most effective, efficient information out as quickly as possible.
Yeah, what I have heard from people is, a limited sample group, to be fair, that those crisis teams are generally people that have other jobs, right? There's no permanent crisis team on a higher ed staff. And so they're used to working in bursts, and it'll be interesting to see how that changes when this is more than just a burst. This is an ongoing thing. We're going to continue to have new information. So these people are trying to, are grappling with, changes in their own responsibilities outside of the crisis management. So it'll be interesting to see if that dynamic changes and if there is a different sort of more permanent sort of staffing situation.
Perhaps a group like marketing communications might take on an office of emergency response or something like that. That's interesting. Well, what I'd like to spend the bulk of our remaining time today looking at examples of emergency response. And I know that you've all compiled an outline of some of the do's and don'ts and observations that you made looking at how universities have responded. Who would like to maybe start sharing their screen and pointing out some examples of things that you feel are working particularly well?
I can go first. Sure.
Fantastic.
Let me work on sharing my screen here. It's hidden. Nope, that's not it. Sorry. I'm not coming up with this. Oh, it's just showing a blank. That's why I'm sorry. Didn't come up with that fast. I'm sorry about that. So this is Rochester Institute of Technology. And there's a few things I just wanted to kind of point out that I really like that they're doing, what they're doing here. This is their coronavirus homepage. So they have it, I like that they have this sort of brand. It still feels like didn't have to create things from scratch. In particular, I also like that they have this call center and ask a question, all these ways of getting contact right on the homepage. I think in a time of crisis, this is really important. I know call centers are overwhelmed. I know your email addresses are overflowing, but this is still essential to have there. It's like a security blanket. Maybe I don't need to call but I saw it. I know where I can get it. I can come back to it when I have that emergency, or I have that question that I didn't get the answer for, or I have this unique circumstances now that hasn't been answered. So I like that, having that front and center on their page. I want to go to another page that they have and point out something there. Hello, Zoom. There we go. There, we need to put something. I'm wondering what to put. And I thought here are some good examples right here. I love the fact that they're like, hey, we're trying some new things. We're trying to keep connections together and keep that together. But it's not normal, and maybe we're not actually that good about it. Please share your feedback. Let's get, that's a user research for me. I always want to get that feedback. And let's identify new use cases. What new problems that we need and situations that we as a team didn't think up, or the university didn't think up, that we have to then didn't realize that it existed and need to be followed through on. So I really liked that. The other thing is this right here, like very simple things of what you can do today. Everybody's going to be you're going to go through highs and lows. It's not like it's one time and that's it. But so lots of people are doing lots of things, like they're creating masks. They're I forget what else. There's just lots of things that people are doing to be able to contribute. But maybe they're not ready for that, especially as a student. You may not be ready. So I really like that they're like these very three simple things about how you can be a better student right now, and being present, like showing up on your Zoom, putting your video on, being there, taking part in the conversation, raising your hand, asking questions, that commitment there. It's not going to go right the first time. So being persistent, like reach out to get help. Let your professor know right away that you're having problems, and then reach out to get help. Maybe it's asking other students in your class how they did that, or asking IT. There's different ways you can do that. And then just being patient, having empathy for not only yourself, but also everybody else who are involved in it. It's new for your instructor as well. They don't have everything figured out. So those are three things that I kind of liked. I can continue with one other website, kind of going back to Emily's equity point. So in talking with some of our clients, they were asked about, what is the call to action that we should be doing now? What could we do? And one of the things that I liked was that they created, at NYU, created an emergency fund for their students. And what this does is give, it helps level that equity of income, so they don't have a job anymore. This can help. So this is all ways that their alumni and supporters and friends, parents who may be okay during this, can help students that are having a little bit more difficulty. And then I'm going to stop sharing. I'll let somebody else take over from here.
Just real quick, Donna. I also liked that they had a caring bridge for their staff as well. I think that's another piece, is the kind of invisible people that make campuses run, that aren't faculty, that aren't staff, or maybe custodians, or and that are out of work, that are the lowest paid workers. Student workers are losing income. So there's that piece as well. I saw that on the site, so that was really great to see. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot, like your food workers, like all the food.
Client of ours that we had nothing to do with making that response website. Does anybody else have any examples that they'd like to highlight?
I have some ready. I can share. I have a couple. I have a compare and contrast. That I love the University of Colorado Boulder's site. The thing that we started with when the UX team was looking at how to do this well, and thinking about the user experience and kind of the emotional state they're in, and how do we support users in this time when they're overwhelmed and maybe scared, and providing first of all, getting the information up there is the most important thing. So we all kind of paused to acknowledge that the speed in which these universities are getting gathering all the questions, figuring out what the questions are, getting responses to those questions, publishing those answers is tremendous. So like even, you know, taking a UX look at this seemed a little harsh because like you've got something up there, yay, like that's great, that's the most important thing. But you know, the second pass is okay, like really considering the user experience. And I love this example because it's not high design. Nobody's having to shoot photography right now. Nobody's having to create new graphics, but they are beginning to kind of take it a little step forward and curate the content for people because it's a tremendous amount of content and it's so overwhelming. So they've figured out some top questions here. They're taking you to, you know, city and state resources. They have key canceled events. So I'm sure there's, you know, thousands of events that have been canceled. They've, you know, surfaced a few, so it's not overwhelming. So you get kind of little glimpses of all the content that's in this coronavirus response site. Then we have a topic-based grid of information, so I can scan through here and be like, oh, okay, I'm studying abroad, or I need campus access, and kind of do a quick scan of where you want, again, an opportunity that's curated, but I can dig in where I want to dig in. To Donna's point about who to contact, that's going to be huge for people right now in communicating a feeling of support and like, we're here for you and we can get your questions answered. And then we have kind of the general announcements, which we've seen on a lot of pages, which is, you know, pretty much almost daily at this point for a lot of people, and less overwhelming for the people coming to the site. So I really appreciated that piece of it. And in contrast, I was like, okay, who designs, you know, who's going to design their response site? And I was like, you know, I went to some of the design schools, and I loved in particular that RISD just totally redid their homepage. They made their homepage their Corona response page, which I think is great because that's what's on everybody's mind. They don't need to see a traditional homepage anymore. This is what they care about. This is the most important thing. So instead of making an alternate,
have you seen anybody else do this?
I don't think so, but we haven't done an exhaustive search. But yeah, their whole homepage, you know, remote learning continues this week, big, powerful. You can dive right in and figure out what you need to know about that. Updates on key events and programs, new commencement plans. Obviously, commencements are like really top of mind for all, you know, it's such a bummer, you know, for these people that have worked so hard to have that taken away. So I think there's like particular emphasis in how do we celebrate these students that have worked so hard and really kind of make that special for them. I love helping a student in need, supporting our most vulnerable students, similar to what NYU did. Requesting assistance if you are a student in need, and then we've got FAQs. So again, very curated. They've made some hard choices. There's a lot of information that if you dig in, you know, it gets ugly real fast. Not ugly, but like you know, you break from this very, it's different points in time. It's solving different problems. So like one maybe addresses, you know, feelings of overwhelm and help me get to where I need to go. Okay, and now I'm just like, I'm ready to dive in. And I want to consume information and like, give me the information now. So they still have this, you know, I can get all my questions asked, but we have this nice stopping point of like, hey, you're here. You probably have a lot on your mind. Let me kind of help you parse that a little bit. So I liked that the kind of compare and contrast, and they're both really great examples in my mind.
Great. Well, we have about 10 or so minutes left, and I know that you've all been working on some recommendations, some very practical key takeaways from what you've looked at. So unless anybody has a really pressing example of something that they'd like to share, feel free. But perhaps we should shift over to the practical recommendations and the do's and don'ts. So last call for screen share. Anybody? Are we good? Okay. Let's talk about the practical stuff. So who would like to talk about some of the do's and don'ts?
I'll jump in since Emily and Donna just talked a lot. So we've been going through, because our clients are mainly higher ed, we've been going through a lot of these sites, as you can tell. And we thought it was smart to take note of the things that people are doing really well, and learn lessons from the things we think aren't done well. And so we've been just collecting all that information in one place. And we started out trying to extend a lot of empathy to these teams, because we know how hard it is to pull something together like this really, really quickly. And so we kind of put together the first thing we did was we put together this short list that we called "Perfect is the Enemy of Good," and it's all about pushing information out there in a timely manner. And so we talked about quickly getting information up there. Donna mentioned when she was doing her site reviews just a couple minutes ago that use the tools you already have in place. Use your current components, use your current page layouts and page templates. Just get something up there that's easy to scan and easy to look at before you worry about over stylizing or complex information architecture, anything like that. Then make sure that you push up the most critical information to the top. Make sure that you're using timestamps and date stamps, because of the rapidly unfolding nature of this crisis. Everybody wants to know they're getting the most recent updates. And so just making that as clear as can be, like this was updated this morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time. That kind of thing can really give people a lot of confidence in the information. Think a lot about your audiences. I noticed on almost every site we went to, they had put some thought into their core audiences, and universities have an extremely diverse audience set. You know, they're often the region's largest employer. So the community itself is interested in information. The staff, the students at all different levels, graduate students, international students. I mean, there's just so much diversity in their content needs. And then lastly, put a little bit of thought, for this early stage into how you're going to drive people to that information. You probably noticed during those reviews we just did that most schools are using their website header to put a banner, like a really bold banner, and that is universal. So it carries through on every page, and you can always get to the crisis information. Other sites like Emily just showed, RISD took over their entire homepage. They decided it's the most important topic right now. So just making sure you think about how you're going to drive people to that information, because they're going to come to your website looking for it anyway. I can keep going unless one of you wants to pick it up.
I have a few things I wanted to say.
Yeah.
I think it's very important, like you said, to get the information out there. But now that we have a lot of information, and we realize this is going to be here a while, and new information is going to come out, we need to be sure that information is organized. So a lot of websites have been doing FAQs and just doing those common questions that are answered. And they're starting to, now they get so many, they're starting to have some organization to it. A lot of it has been by topic and audience. And I do like that. We were actually, Grace and I, just this morning in Slack, we were debating this. So I actually do like having both audience. Normally, I'm not for audience-based organization because a lot of times content can be in both multiple audiences. But if you're using a CMS and you can tag it with multiple audiences, so you're updating it one places and it can appear on multiple places, that's great. That can work. Why I particularly like it in a time of crisis here is because some people might not ask that question yet. So they're like, oh, what is I as a parent also need to be thinking now? Oh, what else should I be talking about? I didn't think about that question. It kind of helps them figure out what all the things they need to be thinking about and caring about. But now that we're not sort of in MVP mode, we're having a little bit more time to organize and think this. Reorganizing your content instead of FAQs to be more informational pages. So just like your website, you are telling them this is what you do. This is how your paychecks will continue. This is what you would do when you're for a student working and you're now going to be working from home. Kind of this is how you access your classes online. Being very more informational pages. It provides more of that authority and confidence, so it's more about attitude that somebody and impressions that your audience gets when reading it. It helps relieve some of that anxiety from them by having it more set up in a more permanent and concise matter and information. This is now the new norm. It's okay. We're going to get through this new norm with it. So just kind of thoughts on like next phases of how to organize this.
Mm-hmm. I think matching language I've seen is really helpful too. And a lot of the research we do for any website is like, what language are the users using, and how can we align the navigation with their mental models? And the sites I'm seeing things like keep learning and keep teaching, and like which really matches like I just want to keep learning, that kind of basic, just like let me do the things I was doing before, and you know, kind of the semblance of normalcy. And so I really I'm starting to see some sites kind of evolve their language a little bit and chunk it up that way.
Something else I know, Todd, you noticed is that schools are building this information hub for the crisis, but they're using it to link off to content that already exists that's relevant to managing your life through the crisis. So it may be how to get into the school's VPN. Okay, that lives over on the IT website, but you just link to it. That's all. So we talked a lot about the different types of content that a crisis website would have. Some of it is going to be very, very timely. So announcements from the president of the campus, those things will be relevant for 48 hours and then move down the list. Then there's more evergreen content that is about, you know, throughout the crisis, these are the policies that we have. And then there are the things that are actually permanent. You can link off to these other department websites and find that content that you never paid attention to before because you didn't have to.
Wonderful. Well, we're almost at the end of our half hour in our first episode. Any closing thoughts before we wrap things up? All right. I think we're good. Thank you, Donna, Emily, and Grace for joining us. So those of you watching at home, you can visit our blog at fourkitchens.com/blog for more information on this topic. We will almost certainly be producing some articles or checklists or something related to the do's and don'ts of emergency communication. You can follow us on Twitter at fourkitchens, FOUR, kitchens, like the room in your house, plural. And otherwise, we will see you again on Thursday, April 9th, when our topic will be redesigning your Drupal 7 site without migrating to Drupal 8 or 9, because let's face it, you probably won't have a capital expense budget available for you in the next fiscal year. So how can you keep your Drupal 7 website up and running right up to and perhaps even after Drupal 7 end of life? So we'll talk about that in a couple of days. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Donna, Emily, Grace, for joining us.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank
Take
you.
care.